Good morning, everyone. We're going to wait a couple of minutes and just see who joins us. We'll let people log on for a moment and then we'll get started. It's a beautiful sunny day here today. Hope you're all having a lovely day. Okay, let's get started. Can we move to the next slide, please? So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Daniella Angel. I'm your host today. I lead talent acquisition for the Northern Hemisphere at Employment Hero, and I've spent the last 13 years in recruitment across different industries and growth stages. And I can honestly say that hiring has never felt more contradictory than it does right now. So today we're going to be talking about a really hot topic, which is hiring in 2026 and why the old rules are broken. Just a bit of housekeeping. First of all, the session is being recorded. We'll share the slides and recordings afterwards. And if we don't get time to get to your questions, we can also answer those after the session. So please do drop your questions into the Q&A box throughout, and we'll do our very best to either cover them today or at a later stage. So now I'd love to introduce our amazing panel for today. Firstly, we have Shelley Vaisey, who is founder and managing partner at Human Matters and a global people leader with deep expertise across HR, talent attraction, and diversity and inclusion. Shelley combines strong commercial awareness with data-driven HR strategy, helping organizations build inclusive, high-performing teams that drive measurable growth. And she's worked directly at executive and board level and is particularly known for her work in inclusive hiring and culture transformation. So welcome to you, Shelley.
Thank you, Daniela.
And also, we are joined by Simon Ryan. Simon is Managing Director at Chapter 2 and co-founder of Chapter 2 Health Talent. Simon has over 18 years in talent acquisition and recruitment. He has partnered with startups, scale-ups, and global enterprises to design scalable hiring strategies and embedded talent solutions. Very recently, Simon launched Chapter 2 Health Talent in partnership with Leo Harrison and Stephen Bartlett, bringing together recruitment, employer branding, and talent advisory to support high growth organizations across the health sector. Simon, great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the great intro, Daniela. You make me sound so good. Thank you.
No problem. Let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, so let's kick off. We can see here 3 in 4 business leaders say recruitment is a challenge. So our recent research shows us that this stat is true and that recruitment is a real challenge right now. We asked business leaders if their company had seen productivity increase or decrease. And among those that reported an increase, the number one cited reason was tech advancements. Next slide, please. So 45% of businesses say they're spending more on talent acquisition, while only 10% say that they're spending less. So hiring is harder and more expensive at the same time. And certainly from my side in talent acquisition, I see high application volumes, but often low quality. And the market feels extremely noisy, with hiring feeling harder on both sides. So Simon, I wanted to come to you first. What changes have you seen in the market that might have influenced this shared feeling of difficulty and frustration?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think it feels challenging, and it is. Some of the shifts that we've seen is it's based on data. So LinkedIn produced a report recently that the number of applications per open role in the UK has doubled since 2022. And that means there's more applications, less signal. And the big drivers, as we all know it, has been the AI generated CVs and the one-click applications. Like applying for jobs it has been as easy as it ever has, which has resulted in a phrase that I call it's the applicant avalanche. So it's the improvement in tech, and we're dealing with that as talent acquisition specialists and recruiters. And it's just about how we navigate that, which I'm sure we're getting to in this discussion.
Yeah, quite right. It's very true. So, if hiring feels harder than ever, that brings us to what I think is the core contradiction of 2026. And we'll move on to the next slide now, which is all about the 2026 hiring paradox. So we're seeing candidates sending out more applications than ever before, but hiring managers across the UK say that there's still a talent shortage. On one side, we've seen high intent talent disappear from the market in about 10 days. And on the other, I recently heard about an executive assistant who sent over 300 CVs and sat through nearly 100 interviews, sometimes 3 to 4 per day. So we have a 10-day sprint on one side and a 100 interview marathon happening in the same market. Simon, I'm going to come to you again. Why is there such a massive gap between the 10-day sprint and the 100 interview marathon? And how can organizations identify the right talent earlier?
Yeah, great question. Again, I would say the gap isn't necessarily about the effort. I think it's the design from the talent acquisition and recruitment team. So I think the companies that are winning it are the ones that are flipping the recruitment funnel. So a lot of individuals, we've probably all heard managers say this: I'm going to recruit and go with my gut. And I think a few ways to improve the recruitment funnel and the stages and the time is to test for skills assessments early in the interview process, as early as possible. You know, a lot of interview processes, they give a interview assessment at the end when it needs to be defined by their skills. So I think the fastest companies are doing that. I also think the fastest companies are not always starting from zero when they're hiring, meaning I see the best TA leaders are asking, you know, their current team members, who is the best people they've worked with and who would they recommend, but also being proactive. You know, if there's individuals of a business that are critical, who are the 2 or 3 internal and external replacements they have to make sure they're on the radar and you can hire as quickly as possible. So I would say 2 things: definitely skills assessments earlier, flipping the recruitment funnel to do that rather than finding out later. And then also I would say, along with the skills, you also have to look at the culture fit. So something Stephen Bartlett has launched recently was the culture test, which is super interesting, where he's built a 35-question scenario-based assessment on culture. And then that would also align the individuals to the skills and the culture and the speed of hiring.
Yeah, so important. Really, really good points there. And Shelley, I'd love to come to you. Why do you think business owners, their experience of searching for talent is more grueling and demoralizing than, dare I say it, modern dating?
Thanks, Daniela. I do like this question. I think just really echoing what Simon has said, there is what I term as a candidate surplus market at the moment. So there are far more active candidates, but they're not necessarily at the top of the skills gains. So I also think, again, echoing what Simon said, AI generated CVs and covering letters is making it, you know, the one click, the experience. You can apply for 10 jobs whilst going home on the tube or the bus. So although I think you know, hiring managers and business owners, certainly from my perspective, are finding things very frustrating because there is this candidate surplus market. I think the quality really needs to be focused on. I also think from a general economic uncertainty point of view, a lot of the top talent that we as recruiters would proactively go out and approach that would never actively look for a role on the traditional platforms. there is an uncertainty about them as individuals taking that risk, starting again, going through that probation period. So when you have these unicorns, they're, in my opinion, less likely to look and test the waters as time's gone by. I also, Daniela, really do think there has been an impact, both positive and negative, due to the Employment Rights Act. So if you think about in my industry, which is disruptive tech, there are a lot of employment differences now that focus on cost to employer rather than gain to employee. So I think that's got a bit of an effect. And yet it can be demoralizing. But again, it's the way that you look at it. Business owners are, some are absolutely fantastic hiring managers. Most are not, because they're business owners and they're driving that narrative, generally not as TAs. So I think, just in short, it is grueling because of that candidate surplus market. However, that top talent needs something different to attract them and for us to approach them and entice them away from where they are right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is very challenging in the market at the moment. Simon, I wanted to just follow up with you. Beyond just speed, why is the old pedigree and proxy model, which is relying on candidates with university degrees or big brand logo experience, why is that failing to produce success in today's market?
Yeah, I love this phrase, by the way, Daniela. So thank you for this one. I would say, pedigree signals elite universities and big name companies. It doesn't always guarantee performance. I think you do find excellent talent there, but it doesn't guarantee performance. So outside that, if you're relying on the universities and big names, you're filtering and excluding huge amounts of capable talent that's dedicated, and develop their skills through non-traditional paths. So I really love those gems where you're seeing people build their skills and experience with startups, scale ups, side projects. I mean, for me personally, I've always had a passion project, and that's something I've always actively spoke about and tried to train and coach my teams with that. And I think learning online platforms, apprenticeships, and real life experiences really supersede that advantage that you need. CIPD have said 83% of UK employers now prioritize skills over applications and qualifications. And that's because they're learning in a new and different way. And I think there's been an increase in people that want that entrepreneurial revolution, want to build their business. And I think they've experimented, failed, and then that's a lot of skills that businesses can really be useful for what they want to achieve as a business.
Yeah,
I think,
brilliant.
so just to add in, and I'm going to jump in here really quickly. I've seen over the past 25 years of experience that I've gained in multiple vertical environments as TA specialists. I certainly coach my teams in terms of when you're doing your onboarding experience with your hiring manager and the key decision makers. We used to have this mind map of literally a person's body, and they would put all of their ideal and must-haves. And then they would say, oh, and they must have this and they must have this. So I'd then create and craft this virtual person, and we'd do a quick search and we go, yeah, there's two of these in the world. What can we pick off?
Yeah.
And actually, I've worked within the academia environment for the last 6 years, prior to Human Matters, and coaching hiring managers and coaching those key decision makers on, do you really need somebody from Oxford, Cambridge, or one of those environments to have gone through that experience? Because the majority of people from a socioeconomic perspective just don't have that financial background. They can't get those masters and PhD experiences under their belt. So I think also, just to really cement what Simon's saying, is think about educating your hiring managers, TA specialists as well, and really coach them into thinking, I don't need one of the top 5 universities with a PhD or a master's. I need practical skills based experience, and those side projects are key. Those GitHub access, they're key.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So if the old shortcuts aren't working, how are organizations actually winning talent? Let's go to the next slide. So winning the war for top talent, in the next part, we're going to go through the perks arms race and corporate catfishing. So we'll whiz through to the next slide. So businesses businesses used to compete with office perks like ping pong tables, free beer, or generally just good office vibes. But now we're in a very different phase where the perks arms race has shifted more towards financial stability and radical flexibility. Candidates are telling us they would trade their corporate gym memberships for, say, higher pay or 4-day work weeks or better pensions. And at the same time, candidate trust has been damaged by things like ghost jobs, which are roles that are advertised without real intention to hire, and by corporate catfishing, which is when the job described doesn't really match the lived experience. Simon, I wanted to come to you. If a company can't compete with tech giant packages, what can they offer to genuinely win over a candidate?
Yeah, this is a conversation we have with clients a lot, and our advice is always to have radical transparency how the company really operates. So you're giving that person, the access to the door, in the door and the windows of the real culture and what you can actually offer. I think starting with a clear mission that the business has set and wants the individuals to believe in and go on that journey with them. I think giving the individuals the platform and ownership to do the best work of their careers. So meaning involved with the decision making and shaping where that business wants to go. Dr. Michelle King, she's an organizational psychologist we work a lot with. She said in a recent research that 77% of people are actually disengaged at work and they're not doing their meaningful work. So if you've got a really hard to fill role, you need to give and take with that individual, especially if it's a very candidate-led market. And something I don't see enough of, especially when a business has grown to a certain size, the involvement of execs and founders in the interview process, reaching out to this talent, because individuals, it could take that ego approach just to kind of get them open to the opportunity of discussing their next step.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And Shelley, ghost jobs seem to have poisoned the candidate as well. What do you think businesses should be doing in their job ads right now to reassure candidates this is a real role with a real budget and the company is able to move quickly?
So I'm going to say on this one, the two first points I've got are be clear and be straight. The fluffy AI generated copy, you can spot it a mile off, especially as a trained eye, both from a candidate point of view and also a TA point of view. I think for me personally, my next 2 points are going to be about infographics. Okay. So from a neurodivergent point of view, clear, concise, I understand what the recruitment process is going to look like. It's 2 stages, it's 4 stages. You're managing the candidate expectation. You put it as an infographic in your copy for your advert. That really reduces the barrier to entry from a neurodivergent point of view. And I think for me as well, having a paragraph, a quote, a snippet, a video inclusion around a shared lived experience from a candidate that's actually doing the job or an employee that's actually doing a job. And I also think job adverts are clearly completely different to job descriptions, and we all know that. So I'd also recommend staying on point with word count, language, appreciate cultural differences if you're recruiting internationally. And then also, I mean, there's products out there. So Be Applied, for example, has many, many tools that desensitize and demasculinize, and they do a lot around inclusion, inclusive language. So I think sharing lived experiences, that infographic on being upfront, this is a recruitment process. This is how long it's going to take. This is when you're going to get feedback. Having that clear feedback makes a job ad seem really real. It's not,
Mm,
use the native language in which your countries you're recruiting. So instead of doing AI generated job ads, for example, write them and then flip-flop them between some of the AI models to see what their take on the language of inclusion might be. Because Claude, and if you use Gemini, whatever platform you use, make sure you're actually second guessing the agents and the platforms as well,
yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, great points. Love the infographic idea. I think that's fantastic. And I definitely agree with you that language is so important and so undervalued often. And so it's really a really important subject. So thank you for raising that. Simon, I wanted to get a sense from you as to how you think SMEs can stand up against this kind of corporate catfishing that we're seeing and actually win talent away from larger brands.
Yeah, that's yeah, perfect. I mean, I think SME's weapon is radical honesty. Going back on what Shelley just said there, that business has to outtrust them, not outspend them, because it's just not possible. They
Yeah.
say, I mean, Robert Walters had done a survey, and they're saying 53% of UK professionals have quit their jobs within the first 6 months because it didn't match the advertisement, and they call it like the shift shock. So again, what Shelley was saying there, the difference between a job spec and a job advert, um, a lot of things we encourage our clients to do is actually grade the parts of the job description into percentages. So they know if it's 50% more heavy on one side. So they're not going in with different expectations. So I think they need to sell speed, impact, access if they're going up against these huge, larger brands.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And Shelley, one more question to you whilst we're still on this subject. I'm seeing more candidates look for proof of culture. And I wondered what your take is on, how brands can move away from glossy brochure ads to something that feels a lot more real and authentic and trustworthy.
This is a really good question for me because we do a lot, and I personally do a lot around culture crisis and around actually showcasing what the nucleus, what the heart of small businesses and scaling businesses and spin outs from unis are doing. So culture is king, and I'm going to stand by that statement. It is key to the success and also the crisis that any one of your team members experiences. For me personally, I know this works. We introduced when I worked for a software autonomy company in the past, we introduced what was called a day in the life of in the recruitment process. So we had a tribe in terms of what the recruitment hiring team looked like. And very early on, we introduced what was called a day in the life of. So the applicant actually got to interview a person doing the job that they were applying for. And it was literally a speed dating session, referring back to one of your previous questions. It was face to face. It was come and have a cup of tea, tell me how really bad it is, or tell me how really good it is. And these are the three questions. The candidate knew they had the option to do this. So a day in the life of where that person that's working for you is a brand ambassador because all of your team members, all of your employees are brand ambassadors, not just the hirers and the MDs. So that would be my first suggestion for anybody in the recruitment process. Introduce what's called a day in the life of. I also, for me, as an ambassador for women in tech and also from an inclusive perspective, I introduced something called See What You Can Be. So what this means is you're constructing your TA specialist, your hiring managers are constructing your hiring party to reflect the art of the possible. So for example, if I had a person that identified as female and she was a principal consultant or principal software engineer, and we were recruiting a level 2 engineer, level 3 engineer, I'd get that individual to come into the hiring squad because I want to be able to look at, because it's key. One of the big growth areas is internal mobility. So a lot of employers right now are really nurturing and cultivating internal talent so that they can promote from within and then backfill those individuals elsewhere in the business. It saves a huge amount of money. It really solidifies your culture and makes your culture a really strong draw. Um, so I think from introducing more diversity in the tribe and offering applicants nearing the end of the cycle the chance to meet somebody actually doing the job they're applying for is critical for me.
Yeah, it really creates that psychological safety, I think,
Yeah.
when they're able to do that. And you're right, internal promotion is such a big kind of pull factor for candidates and for businesses who are hiring. Um, so that's going to take us nicely into our next slide, which is all around the skills conversation. So we're going to talk about the rise of the skills first economy here. We're seeing a pivot away from university degrees and big brand logo experience towards capability and development. And that's something we briefly discussed a little bit earlier. The skills first economy means we care less about where someone has worked and more about what they can do and how they learn, which is a fundamental shift in how we screen and how we interview. Simon, when reviewing a CV or a candidate from a big four firm versus someone with a portfolio of self-taught skills, how should businesses weigh up the two?
Yeah, I would say the big four name tells you that someone survived like a training program and that culture. The self-taught portfolio tells you someone who's got the initiative, curiosity, the proof that they can actually experiment and do the work. So CVs are the story that tells you about themselves, but the portfolio is the evidence. I would be, when that comes to an actual example, I would say giving those candidates the same real problem and seeing the outcome from both. Shelley touched on like a really nice point earlier. Some of the best candidates that I've seen join businesses are the ones that when they're going for an actual role, if there is that role that exists in the business, they've actually reached out to that individual and said, hey, how is this role working for this organization? And they've done some deep research. So I think as well as doing these assessments, they need to take it one step further and doing that extra, going above and beyond and reaching out to the business and understanding the role from the people that are doing it themselves.
Yeah, completely agree. And Shelley, what does a skills first interview actually look like in practice? So how do we move away from, tell me about a time when and towards real proof of capability?
So I read a book, and it's had many editions since I read the probably one of the first or second editions. And it's called Hiring and Getting Hired by Lou Adler, a real industry leader in our TA capability environment. So in short, a skills first interview for me is like a bit of a breath of fresh air, to be honest, because it's so much more interactive. Um, so it shifts the focus from where someone has been, so the CV halo, to talk about what Simon was just saying, or a big name university or past company or past full brand, to what they actually do today and their potential to grow tomorrow. So in practice, as a TA or hiring manager, pick one of the skills, okay, that's required. And I'll coin Simon's phrase, you're weighting it with that skill is 50% of the job. That skill is this, it's critical environment. And instead of spending 45 minutes talking about the past, a large proportion of the interview is then dedicated, in my world, to work samples or live simulations. So I work within the tech industry, as I've said. So from a coding experience, you could do live coding simulations together because you're getting that practical signal of this person can write this level of code with this level of definition or support to coming away from tell me about a time when you X. So instead of, Mother Nature gave us two ears and one mouth, and we should use it in that ratio when it comes to recruiting, I would always look for live simulations or work samples and specifically talking about stripping away fancy degrees and big brand logos and actually focusing on the skills that indicate real capability. And it levels the playing field for me because it's irrelevant where you've come from if you've got a protected characteristic or you're coming from an underrepresented environment. You can really level the playing field with that practical example in an interview situation. If the candidate knows that this is the process right from the infographic at the start of the interview, at the start of the job ad, they can actually level the playing field by bringing their practical experience to the table.
Yeah, and it really sets those expectations early. And the other thing I think people will be quite interested to understand is how do you implement that skills first interview without adding, additional interviews or layers to an already potentially quite exhausting or long-winded candidate journey.
I mean, for me, again, it starts right before you've even gone to market with a job ad. You're managing the hiring manager's expectation, you're managing the candidate's expectation and experience. I would never put in more than 3 layers from start to finish when I'm advising clients, and that includes the TA's pre-screened questions, etc., etc. So I think it's really, really important. I'm going to go back right to the first answer I gave you. Be clear, be concise, and really focus on not expanding that and taking time and not, your competitive energy and your advantage is speed and clarity, in my opinion. So you're clear, you're concise, and you're not making candidates take 3, 4, 5 days off work, spending their holiday within that interview process.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Mm.
Well, I'm very excited to move on to our next topic on our next slide. And it's a hot topic that's on everyone's lips right now, and that is AI. So I think AI makes people feel two completely or conflicting things at the same time. So firstly, there's a bit of fear, like, are we slowly removing the human form, the human from hiring? But there's also a lot of excitement because if we're honest, a lot of recruitment is admin, it's scheduling, it's screening, it's chasing feedback, writing notes, etc. So when AI comes in and takes some of that off your plate, you suddenly get time back, which allows you to actually speak to people, make connections, explore motivation, to test thinking, and do all of that core fundamental human stuff. So for me, the question isn't whether AI is good or bad, it's what does it become in your organization? Does it create distance or does it actually create more space for human judgment? Shelley, I'm going to come to you first here. I'm really curious about this idea of AI being an equalizer. If we strip away, like we said before, the fancy degrees, the big brand logos, and actually focus on skills and real capability, does that start to level the playing field? And can AI actually help us move past some of the bias that perhaps we don't even realize we're carrying?
Before I answer that, I think I'm going to make a real key statement here. Every single human, because it is a basic human behavior, carries bias. You need to recognize it, subconscious and conscious bias. I do a lot of training around recognizing subconscious and conscious bias because bias isn't all bad. Okay, it's quite protective in some environments, but recognizing your preconceived mirrored bias allows you as a hiring manager or as a recruiter to really put that candidate first rather than you being put first in the image of what you think good looks like. So now to answer that question, I think there's definitely a place for AI. I'm going to be a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons with this. The pre-screening works well. It helps with a lot of that admin. Claude, for example, as one of the platforms, has expanded its HR tools, which look great. However, I personally believe, and it is my personal belief, that we're still at a time where the human layer, the human-centric approach, the human touch is so super important, because candidates are so disillusioned with the recruitment process that if AI delivers 80% of their experience, who are they actually talking to? And also, controversially, don't forget that several tech companies have been sued because of their use of AI in their recruitment process. And I'm not going to poke a hornet's nest here, but remember, a great deal of the agent codes and the platforms are written with male bias in the language. Okay, they're taught to look for repetitive words. They're taught to look for use of gender neutral or non-gender neutral language. Products such as Be Applied, and I mentioned this before, of a neutralizing tool when it comes to copywriting for job ads. But I personally would lead with an air of caution. And I think in this as well, you also have to question the background and where the data and what the outcomes look like when it comes to AI. There is a place for it. I don't think that place should be at the forefront or helm of your recruitment process in total. And that is just my opinion.
Thank you, Shelley. No, it's really good to hear your viewpoint on it. Um, and Simon, I wanted to ask you, there's the other side of AI. We talked about that executive assistant earlier who sent out 300 CVs. We're now in this slightly strange world where AI writes CVs, AI then screens the CV, and somewhere in the middle, the person can potentially disappear. Are you seeing organizations use AI in a way that still keeps that human connection intact?
Yeah, for sure. And Shelley, I love your opinion by that. By the way, we've got to keep it real, haven't we? So, Daniela, that's it. You've got individuals using AI to apply for jobs, and they're being screened out by AI. And then, there's other tools out there like GPT-0 that's screening CVs that may have been AI generated. So we're in this constant loop, right? So I think there's a lot of AI slop out there, but I think we've got to use AI as recruiters or people in talent to spend more time on the in real life connection, the human connection of recruiting. So, you know, through my experience doing recruitment a long time, even when you're calling a candidate with full feedback why they wasn't successful, sometimes that candidate sounds more happy than the person you're offering the job because they've been given that mental closed loop, that feedback's been given them. And I think that's like super, super important. I think there can't be any excuses now. We need to use AI to generate the time so we can do the right things, updating candidates with updates, even if you don't have an update. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's that journey from someone applying all the way to the end. So, being human, closing the loops, picking up the phone, doing the sense checks of the story and making the actual hiring decisions in the end based on AI data and the data that we've got, I think is super, super important for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I had an example recently where I had 3,500 applications for one
Wow.
role, and I personally went through every single one of those CVs. And I do think if I had an AI tool to help me perhaps just really hone in on the very, very best people for that role, then that would allow me to be more efficient and therefore give the candidates that are in the process everything that they need from me, and ensure that they have a fantastic human candidate experience.
Mm.
So I think we've got to think about where we use AI from an efficiency perspective and essentially just allow us to be more human and allow us to be better at our jobs. And I'm sure we could spend another hour just talking about AI on its own. But the bigger question is, what do we do with all of this knowledge? And if the old rules are broken and AI is changing the game, what should leaders actually change on a Monday morning? So let's move into our next slide around turning insight into action. So look, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'd like to spend some more time before we finish up just making this really concrete with a few quick fire questions for to both of you actually. So perhaps we start with Shelley and then Simon if you answer afterwards. So Shelley, in a few words, how should leading organizations attract strong talent right now without lowering the bar?
I think, okay, stand in the mirror first of all as a recruiter and recognize before you even open your mouth that your impact on a hire is unmeasurable. It's absolutely immeasurable. And for me, it is okay, when you're supporting a candidate, would you pay them a salary out of your mortgage? Would you pay for them? Or are you just essentially hoping that that candidate will work out really well for the business? So I think reflection, first of all, speed and clarity is your competitive advantage. I've already said that. And for me as well, closing that loop, and I'm using Simon's phrase here, giving that clear feedback and treating candidate experience as a priority. Those are the key things I would say in answer to that.
Yeah, brilliant. And same question to you, Simon. How should organizations attract strong talent without lowering the bar?
Yeah, no, again, great question. I think, look, our original founder, Leo Harrison, came from one of the most disruptive marketing agencies, Oliver, and we've used a lot of his experience in what we do as a business chapter two. So I think opening the windows and doors to your business, let people see the real work, the real humans and the people and the real mission. So strong employer brand, EVP, and just crystal clear on what makes you different and don't compromise on that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Next question is, if you're a hiring manager with a tight budget and slow internal HR processes, what is one guerrilla tactic you can use to win talent? Shelley?
So I've got a good one for this. Little experience. Okay, I used to work with an individual that had a very unique skill set, and his hiring activity was really quite needy. Lots and lots of vacancies, very few candidates. So I actually coached him into writing out a bit of it wasn't a LinkedIn post, but a personal message that he then went and targeted individuals in the marketplace actively himself. This is a founder, this is a real
Yeah.
internationally recognized individual with a lived experience and a personal touch. And we weren't the biggest payers, we weren't the biggest organization, but the fact that you're addressing individuals on a personal basis, I would always recommend a manager to go out there and target those individuals with a key personal lived experience, what they're expecting, what they're hoping for, getting to know them and asking about football teams and what their children are doing. So that personal element for me.
Yeah, brilliant. And same question to you, Simon. What's the guerrilla tactic to win talent?
Yeah, I think again, trying to think outside the box, like what Shelley just said there. I think as a suggestion, businesses, if they really want to be out there and be transparent, I think running like an open house, whether it's in person or live stream of your team, your office, pin that with the job advert and let candidates literally drop in, watch the stand
Yeah.
up, ask questions in the chat, and see that real life culture unfiltered. So no corporate can match that level of transparency. You could also have, again, we always want open, fair, and to competition interview processes, but create like a queue jump or a fast lane of the interview process. Individuals reach out to me because they want to speak to other individuals in our business about roles that they're hiring. So again, yeah, we all receive messages even when we're being sold to. The ones that stand out to me are the ones that are a little bit different, a little bit more personal, and you can see that the person's done the research. So it has to work both ways, from a business and as an individual.
Yeah, completely
I think
agree.
also, just to quickly jump in here, one thing that used to work really well for us, we used to do a hackathon events
Mm,
where they were open to anyone. So from university partnerships right the way up to somebody that's based in another country. So hackathon events with no outcome, they were free. Developers could use, learn from each other. They could share, get a repository information, blah, blah, blah. But also having somebody there just to talk to them from a charity point of view or a give back point of view, the
mm,
connections in the community, so schooling, further education, higher education, community work around representation of your brand as well. So as I said right at the start, every employee is a brand ambassador. Get them to work for you and nurture that culture, and don't put the culture in crisis. So that guerrilla tactic is getting your brand out there, but in a creative way, not just on a job ad.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Those kind of human meetups are so important and a really great opportunity, particularly for volume hiring as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Really good opportunity to get in front of lots of people. Um, Final question to both of you. What is one thing everyone should stop doing and one thing they should start doing by Monday morning? Shelley?
Stop doing, I would say, is relying on AI in the first instance, right at the start of the model of your tribe experience, of your hiring experience. So in my opinion, a lot of organizations, especially some of the larger ones, have become, I'm using Simon's phrase, sloppy right at the start. So because of the 3,500 applicants, Daniela, that you mentioned, because of that EA's experience of sending out 300 applicants, I would say from a human value centric point of view, right at the start of the process where you're launching into market, don't rely on AI for that. Make it a lived experience, make it human centric. So stop doing that. Start, I would say two things here. Close the feedback loop and give clear feedback. Even if the feedback is difficult for you to message. And I'd also say for the recruiters that are on this call specifically, make decisions with confidence. You're good at what you do. Believe in the skill. It is a skill. Don't rely on the gut instinct. Make your confident. Make your challenging decisions. Make your decisions with confidence, because it is a skill from a social point of view, a psychological point of view, and also from an economical point of view that we all have as recruiters. Make decisions with confidence, I would say, and believe in yourself.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And Simon, anything to add there on what hiring managers or businesses should stop doing and what they should start doing by Monday morning?
Yeah, so I think stop hiring by gut feel and being so reactive. Don't wait for the job description or the rec to come out, and start
Yeah,
being, proactive when you're hiring. Just because you're not got position signed off, there are loads of people in the market that love to have conversations and meet in real life. So be proactive with that. Hire by skills and evidence, and experiment. A lot of things that we've said here, we've given some quite cool tools and tips. Experiment with them and see how they go, because you want to fail as quickly as possible so you know what's going to work for you. And also I would say, Shelley, I love your advice. It makes me feel even better with the confidence on decisions, for sure.
good.
Awesome. Well, look, great answers there. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we've got a Q&A next, but what I might do is push past that, and then maybe we can go back to questions at a later stage. And so if we move to the next slide after Q&A, Just a brief one from us before we wrap up. I wanted to briefly show you how Employment Hero is approaching this shift around kind of AI and recruitment. And so we do have an AI recruitment agent. It can screen candidates 24/7 using structured AI-led video interviews, and it can remove gut feel bias with objective scoring. It can reduce screening time by up to 46%, and it gives clearer insights into the person behind the CV. So if you'd like to learn anything more on that, then please go ahead and scan the QR code now. So that's it. We'll move on to the final slide and just say thank you so much for joining today. Simon, Shelley, your input, your insights have been exceptional. It's been an absolute joy to host you both today. And thank you so much to everyone that has joined us live. For those that are watching the recording, thank you as well. We'll send out the recording and the slides very soon after this. But really hope this session's been valuable, and yeah, really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Daniela. And also to the individuals that are attending, if we've mentioned any text or literature or studies, feel free to reach out to Simon or I directly, and we can send you those as well as links.
Yeah. No, thank you, Daniela. You've been a fantastic host. Great to hear your insights as well.
Perfect. Well, look, lovely to catch up with you, and we'll sign off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.